already. It looks like everyone has. There'll be points in time where Corey will be taking questions, and you can unmute yourself, ask questions, or type them into the chat, and we will be answering them at certain key points of the conversation. If you have any questions or comments, raise your hand. I'll be keeping track of those and dishing them to Corey during the Q&A part. If you need live captioning turned on, if you're not familiar with that, you go to the 3-dot ellipsis more options button in the upper right-hand side menu and turn on live captioning. That will essentially be closed captioning and type out what Corey is saying. At the end of this session, we'll be giving away a $25 gift card. That will happen in every session you attend. It will be a random draw based on the people who have attended here and stayed till the end. So if you're thinking of cutting out the last 2 minutes early, please stay. Otherwise, you might miss out on your chance. At the very end of the day, we'll be giving a grand prize away, which again will be selected at random by your survey submissions. I'll send you guys the link to the survey or the QR code here shortly. Today, we're giving away a Microsoft Surface Go. So decent prize for those who fill out the survey. Quick thank you. I don't want my slides change. Quick thank you to our sponsors. These are the people who make these events happen by sponsoring these. I know virtual events are a little different, but we've come up with some creative ways. So Now Micro, Cyber Advisors, RBA, Arctic Wolf, and Concurrency are this year's sponsors for the Admin Workshop Day fall event. Thank these guys very much for their continued support. This is the survey link to fill out the survey. Please don't fill it out till the end of the day or after each session. You can go and put in your comments, but please don't submit it till the end of the day because you can only submit once, I believe. And we don't want to read through a bajillion survey responses. Like I said, the Surface Go is the giveaway for filling out the survey. If you want to screenshot that QR code, leave it up there for 30 seconds. Otherwise, I'll put this URL into the chat link in this meeting, and you'll get this URL and QR code in every session you attend. So don't worry about it if you don't grab it right now. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and as I introduced Corey already, I'm going to turn it over to him. Thank you guys all for joining, and let's have a great session.
Great, thanks, Tiernan. So it should be sharing my screen. We've got kind of the title slide, automating messages in Teams. We're good, and we can hear me all right. Cool. Well, so thank you everyone for joining. I'm Corey. We're going to talk about automating some messages in Teams using a crawl, walk, run spectrum. I do work for Microsoft, so hopefully you won't hold that against me. And we are recording all of my lame jokes, which means I might have to pull some of them back. All right. The first thing that I want to call out is, and I'm going to post this in the chat, if you like to follow along or go ahead, or I just put some stuff in the deck that I'm going to gloss over and share a link messages I put in the chat. You can download the deck right now. I'll have it on your other screen. I got a bunch of links in there, so if you want to follow along at home or just stay on slides longer than I do, that's there for you. And then Tiernan, if folks join later, maybe you could copy paste that back in because they won't see it if they join after I paste that. That would be great.
Will do.
All right, so let's get started. Why are we talking about automating messages, or why am I talking about it anyway? I'm sure you all probably have some reasons that you're doing it today or thinking about doing it. These are some of the reasons as I've been helping customers over the last year or two, the reasons that we're seeing why we want to automate messages. So I'm talking about automatically pumping a message or a card into a Teams channel or sending to a private chat with a person. So we've seen everything from, we just want to replace email messages or Slack notifications. So Teams makes sense in many ways for that. So we don't have to forward emails around, add people to distribution things. So maybe we can notify a channel to save some collaboration time. Automated messages in Teams also makes a lot of sense for pumping direct notifications directly from other systems. So I'm going to show you some examples like ServiceNow, and there's lots of others. So we've got all these systems that maybe we're sending thousands of emails. Maybe we want to direct those automated notifications into Teams. Another example would be if there's any developers in the crowd, if you've got build and deploy services where you're building applications and doing some DLP, or excuse me, ALM, and you've got stuff happening, you want to be alerted when builds fail or deploys fail, well, I can pump those into Teams. And then the last one I've been helping a few customers with lately and really drove kind of my run scenario here was, I work with a lot of folks that work the major incidents in their service desk. So when P1s, P2s, Sub-As, Sub-Es, whatever you call them, when those happen, the process for them isn't great today. They fire up a triage call and bring everybody in and have to type down what everybody says. So collaborating on major incidents in Teams actually is pretty nice. So maybe we can automate messages in there. The way that, so I've already lied to you. Sorry, not sorry. So I baited you in with the crawl, walk, run, 3 steps, and I'm actually going to talk about 4. So as I told Doug, we're going to build 4 things today. We're going to crawl, walk, jog, run. The walk and jog are basically the same thing, but really we could have talked about like 37 different approaches, but I tried to boil them down to 4. So we're going to start with the crawl and talk about incoming webhooks. And if you don't know any of these terms, I've got a glossary in the back of the deck. So if you haven't downloaded the deck yet, go check it out. I've got a glossary here and I'll try to explain them as I go. So here's some terms that I'll be mentioning today. So if I go back, so we're going to talk about incoming webhooks. The walk is we're going to use Power Automate, also some standard triggers. We're going to use Power Automate with a premium trigger. And then we are going to bust open some code. So if that scares anybody, don't be scared. Developers are only really good at, all they do is 2 things. I used to be a developer. We can search Google or Bing really well, and then we're good at copying and pasting. So we're going to do some of that today. Before we get there, I just want to understand where everybody's at so I know what I need to dive into and what I don't. So I'm going to put this link in the chat, or you can type it in. So if you wouldn't mind, it's like a 4 or 5 question survey. Just let me know where you're at on the spectrum. So I'm going to pull this up. Hopefully somebody will help me out and fill out. Okay, we got some responses. I just want to know, like, do we have people that know this stuff and I just need to go fast, or what? All right, so have you built the flow and Power Automate before? So we got a bunch yes, some no. Have you worked with JSON? Okay. And if you don't know these terms, it's totally fine. We're going to talk about it. Okay. Are you developed? Cool. Got some maybes. I was wondering who might do a maybe on a developer. All right. So we've got about half developers. So that's cool. And I am always amazed at how many people do not like pie. Something's wrong. I don't know what happened to you and pie, but all right. So we've got most people have built Power Automate flows. Most people have worked with JSON. About 3 people don't know whether they're a developer or not. That's cool. And then most people like pie. All right. So thank you for doing that. So that helps me out. We'll make sure that we cover off on some of these a little bit. But like I said, you have the copy of the deck, and then all the instructions for the stuff that I'm going to go through are published out in GitHub. So we'll go through those today, and my deck has the links to those right now if you want to check them out. All right, so let's go back. So thank you for doing that, appeasing me, and hopefully there's little chuckles going on that I can't hear. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about is the crawl. So we're going to talk about an incoming webhook, and I'll show you exactly what that is. But essentially, we're going to try to make a little card like this that I can customize the logo, I can customize who it comes from, and we're going to make a card that looks kind of like whatever I want. I got some text, I got a table, I got a button, and we're going to bring this into a Teams channel. I'm going to show you my little kind of architecture drawing here before we actually go build it. So what we are going to do is we're going to build this thing. Whoops. Can I get my pen to work? Oops, sorry. They fail. If that's the worst for today, we'll be all right. All right, so we're going to build this guy right here. So we're going to build an incoming webhook. We're just going to configure it in Teams. And so that's going to allow me to pump some messages into this channel. All right. So I'm going to pump messages into this channel. And then I'm going to be able to call it from wherever. So once I have that web hooked up, that is just an endpoint that I can call from ServiceNow, whatever my homegrown systems are. Almost anything will talk the language of an incoming webhook. For purposes of today, I'm going to test this myself in something called Postman, which I'll talk about. So we're going to build this incoming webhook, which will create an HTTPS URL that we can then call. All right, so let's get to demo. As I said, 4 demos. When we're done with this demo, in between each of these 4 kind of parts of the spectrum, I'll pause and we'll take questions. And I saw that John is laughing regularly, so thank you. Don't know whether it's at me or with me, but I'll take what I can get. All right, so let's start the demo fun. So I am in a demo tenant. I am in the Teams web interface, and I've got a team called MM365 Workshop Day. So just so I can show you that I don't have anything up my sleeve, I'm going to create a new channel and hope for the best. So we're going to call this, we'll just call it Workshop, and we'll add it. And we'll hope that things get added quickly. All right, I've got a new channel. So this is where I want to send some messages. So I'm going to click on the ellipses for my channel, and I'm going to go to connectors. Connectors are just things, they're little plugins, they're little connectors that allows me to bring in, retrieve, or send messages to other systems. So I've got DevOps and Jira and Yammer and all these ones out here. The one I'm going to do is incoming webhook. So this is a built-in, out-of-the-box connector that Microsoft provides. It doesn't require an additional license or anything like that. So I'm going to configure that. And there's just a couple things that I set up. I'm going to give it a name. So what do we want? Who do we want this to be from when the message gets posted? So I'm just going to call it, we'll call it auto message, call it webhook, so we know. Too many spaces. Auto message webhook. I can upload a custom image, so grab your favorite. If it's ServiceNow, grab a ServiceNow image. If it's your custom homegrown thing, grab your own image. I'm going to skip that for now, and that's it. I'm going to hit create, and it is going to create a URL for me. So now I got this long URL, Outlook, blah, 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 blah. So this is a unique, secure URL that just about any system in the world that knows how to talk HTTP, which is just the language that browsers and other systems talk. Anything with the P in it, if I remember from my college networking class, stands for protocol. So it is a protocol that systems kind of talk through. And your browsers talk through. If you remember browsing to anything, there's usually HTTP on the front. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to hit done. So I'm going to take that now. I've got my connector configured. So now I've got my endpoint. I've got my spot where I can send messages to. So I'm going to trust that that's going to work. There we go. We've got it set up. So now I'm going to introduce you to a tool that we haven't talked about yet. And I'm going to, this is called Postman. So in the deck, I have the link to download it. It is a free tool. It is not a Microsoft tool. There's lots of different tools that do this kind of stuff. But this one is a popular one. So all it's really going to do is help us make calls to that webhook that a system would normally do. So I'm going to create a new request. We'll call it incoming webhook. All right, let's go to incoming webhook. So there's first thing we get are some verbs. If you've ever browsed to Google.com or Bing.com, which I'm sure you've done multiple times a day, you are doing under the covers a get. I'm just getting a web page and getting a URL. So the difference here is we're actually going to do a post. So just a different type of call. And I'm going to paste in my webhook link. And then I am going to add one header because it recognizes something called JSON, and we'll look at that in a second. So this is the type of text that we're going to send it. And then I'm going to go to body. So I need to send it my actual message. So I'm going to go to raw, and so I'm not going to create this from scratch. I'm going to just grab a sample because the Teams incoming webhook does use a specific type of format. So within the deck, there's a link to this article right here that talks about what are incoming webhooks and what are the supported message formats. So this one happens to kind of have its own. We'll talk about something called adaptive cards in a little bit, but this one has its own kind of proprietary one. But it's got a nice little message card playground. So let's open that. So what I'm seeing is, and I'm going to choose a different one that I want to use. How about this one? So on the right is my card. So that's what it's going to look like when I drop it into Teams. And the left is JSON. So JSON is really just text. It's got some curly braces, and then it's got name value pairs. So for example, summary is the name, issue 176 blah 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 is the value, theme color is the name. So it's just got a bunch of name value pairs. This is how systems talk to each other, but it is kind of human readable. So what I'm going to do is copy this, and if I wanted to change this to, I could change it to Corey, and you see on the right that it has changed it. So I'm going to take this, make sure that I don't have the wrong one. See if this works. And then I'm going to go back to Postman. I'm just going to paste that in there. And then I'm going to hit send. And then I'm going to pull up Teams and see what happens. Did it work? I might have got the wrong one. Okay. All right. I just needed to be patient. Okay. So I sent that. I got a 200. Okay, back. Let's look at here. All right. So I got a 200. In our world, that means things are good. If I flip over here, all right, cool. I've got my issue open, Corey Buzzell. So now I put in a card here with some buttons. It came from Auto Message webhook, and I've got my custom little image. So that's cool. So that is kind of the easiest, quickest way to get any message from any system, and I can test it really quickly with a tool like Postman. Now I want to show you one more, just kind of the next step. So that's Corey opening up a thing and pumping some messages to it, kind of hard coded. But I want to show you maybe like a real world example. So I'm going to flip over, and I'm in ServiceNow, and I've set up a workflow in ServiceNow. We're not going to get into it today, but I do have the instructions on my GitHub repo linked in the deck. So I'm going to create a new one called, we'll just say, doors are locked. All right, and my workflow says when it's a urgency of high, that it is going to send that to the webhook in Teams. So I'm going to submit it, and then hopefully fairly quickly, if I come over, I'll look at my incident. So I have a service desk team for this example. So I've got a different webhook that looks a little bit different. I put the ServiceNow logo. I say it's coming from ServiceNow incidents. And then here's the card that I constructed with the information straight from ServiceNow. So it constructed that JSON payload to look a little bit different than what I had before. I got some buttons. We can reply to it now. We can start meetings. I can @mention other people. We can have a whole threaded conversation here on this incident while other incidents are happening. And this was kind of the crux of why I really started to dig into this, what we call proactive messaging. All right, so we're going to get close to questions here. I'm going to step back on to the deck and just kind of wrap up the crawl here. So I've got a little scorecard that will keep track of what the different methods can do and can't do, so you can choose after the points here are this incoming webhook allows any system really to pump a message into Teams. I'm not using additional licensed connectors. I can brand it. Unfortunately, I cannot post it to a person. I am stuck with just doing it in a channel. We saw JSON, so I do have to know the actionable message card format, which is the format that Teams wants. It's pretty quick and easy. There's the link to Postman. This is just a send and forget. So I'm not updating that message. I'm not getting a response back, so I can do something about it. This is like really quick, send and forget. I can't update it. I don't need a developer. Hopefully you're not scared of JSON. It looked like most of the crew wasn't. So if I put this in a nice little grid, this is where we're starting with crawl. I can call it from any system, don't need additional license, I can brand it. And I do have to configure it on every channel that I want to post to. I got to go drop a webhook on it. Okay. So I'm going to pause, take a drink, and see if anybody has any questions. All right.
Corey, I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
But anyone who has any questions, feel free to come off mute and ask them or type them in the chat.
All right. So let's move into the walk. So now we're going to use Power Automate, and I've split these up so that we can kind of deal with licensing a little bit. So we're going to use standard triggers, and we'll talk about Power Automate with some premium triggers. Essentially, we're going to have the flow bot send messages in here. So we're gonna change this up. So we're going to use our low code tool to be able to send messages in. And it's going to come from the Flowbot, but I can send it to any channel and any message. So we're going to be able to do simple messages. We're going to be able to do card type messages, but we're going to drop messages into Teams via Power Automate. So what this looks like from my poorly drawn little diagram here is, you'll notice the difference is not only can I do channels with this, but I can also do chat. So I can private message, instant message individual people with this, just using the out-of-the-box Teams Power Automate connectors. Now, the call out here for my triggers is, I see there's a question. I'll pause here in a second while I answer. So my triggers that I'm kind of constrained to with the standard ones are, I can run this manually, like just kick it off with a button, I can schedule it, or I can start it with really any Office 365 service. So if I want to send a message when somebody updates an item or a document in SharePoint, or when I get an email, I can do that. So I am kind of scoping it to Office 365 services because that's what you're licensed for Power Automate. So Chris asks, it doesn't support adaptive cards, only message cards. So that is true. The Teams incoming webhook does not support adaptive cards right now. I'm hoping it does. There's articles of people saying it does, but it is that kind of legacy message cards. They're very similar, but they are different. Chris, good question. And Joseph asks, for the replies in the service note, is there a way to bring those back into the work note? Okay, so Joseph is asking, for the replies in the ServiceNow card, is there a way to bring those back into the work notes in ServiceNow? So with the way that we set that up in the webhook, this is a send and forget. So with this model, the crawl, there isn't an easy way to send it back into ServiceNow without doing some more work. There might be, I'd have to set something up on top of the webhook. I'd have to do a flow or something. I'm going to show you, that's probably more towards the run when we talk about that kind of two-way communication, getting stuff back in. But it's a good question, Joseph. So maybe hang on to that. Good questions. Keep them coming. All right. So let's create a Power Automate flow with some standard triggers that notifies stuff in Teams. All right. So I'm going to go to office.com. And I'm going to go click on Power Automate. And I'm trying to not hide anything and have a lot of stuff preloaded, just so the folks that haven't been here before can kind of see the path to get to it. So I'm going to create a new flow. And whatever, I don't like these. I just like to skip. All right. So I'm just going to start with the button, but I could start with SharePoint and say, you know, when a file is created, I could kick this off, right? But we're just going to stick with the stuff that we own in Office 365. So I'm going to manually trigger a flow, and I'm going to do a new step. And if I just search for Teams, click on Teams, there is a number of post a message type connectors here or actions here. So if I post a message, this is not the one I really want, because what this is going to do is this is going to post it as Corey or whoever is authoring this flow, which I'm not really down with. So that's not, I don't want people being notified by me unless it's some kind of one-off little thing. I want it to kind of be branded a little bit. So I'm going to get rid of that one. So there's a couple in here that are more my style, my speed. So let's look at Teams again. So I'm going to post a message, post a message as the Flowbot to a channel, and it is in preview, so you gotta keep that in mind. So I'm going to post a message as the Flowbot. So it's not going to be posted as me. It is branded. I don't have control over that, but it's not me, so that's cool. So I'm going to pick my team, and we called it that one. I'm going to pick my channel, workshop. So I'm going to say hello world because I'm lame. And we'll just say, so the first thing we notice is it's a lot easier to set this up. I don't need to know JSON. I don't need to know the format. I don't have to open Postman. But then we'll see there's some kind of give and take here. So I'm just going to do the other one that was out here. So I go to Teams. There's a post, a message as the Flowbot to a user. So that's cool. I'm going to send it to my admin user. And we'll say hello world there too. We'll say yo, and we'll call this bundle message. Let's save it. Cross our fingers, looks good. Let's run it. All right, run please. All right, looks good. It's running. Going through step one. All right, so it looks like it worked. Let's go check out Teams. All right, so here's the one that we just got. So I'll zoom in just a little bit here. So we've got Flow at 9:30 saying hello world, and it kind of, you know, it told everybody that it was me. So my name is still kind of in there, but it is coming from the Flow bot. So this bot is out there. It's installed for everybody, so I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But so I did kind of the same thing. I'll get a little more fancy with my message in a little bit, but I can just do simple messages to drop in here in a short amount of time. If I check out my private chat, I've got the Flow bot sending me a yo message. So that's a nice thing. I can send individual messages to people, which I couldn't do with the incoming webhook. That was just all about a channel. So that's kind of cool. I dig that. There's some use cases for that. Now let's talk about why else I think that this is a walk or intriguing. So incoming webhook was just send a message. That's all I'm doing. Well, now if I had a process kickoff in like ServiceNow or Workday or whatever it is that could run this, I guess we're scoping it to SharePoint. Something happens in SharePoint or Mail or whatever, Office 365. So I can post messages, but you know what? I can do some other stuff. I could create a team. I could create a channel. I could get a team. I can do lots of other stuff now in addition to sending my message. So I can have this be flex workflow where I'm doing lots more things. So it's not just a message notification and that's it. I can do a lot more stuff in addition to at the same time that I want to do. So that's nice. There's usually more that I want to do on things like that. So that's my walk. Let's see. All right. Talked about everything there. So let's go back to the deck, get ready for your questions. We'll just quickly review. So with my standard triggers, I'm triggering it on Office 365 service stuff, manually or scheduled. I'm still not using additional licensed stuff. I get some added benefits here of Well, not so much added benefits. This one is a little bit of a ding, is that I'm kind of stuck on who the branding of who this message comes from. So it's coming from me, whoever created it, or the Flowbot. I do not have to configure this, go to every channel and do a configuration, although in order for me to find the channel that I want to send to, I do have to have access to it. So you got to keep that in mind. When I'm creating my flow, whoever's creating it, in order to get those drop downs to work for the teams and the channels, I got to have access to them. I can do simple messages. I can test it really easily. I have the flexibility to do lots of other stuff, as we just talked about. I still can't update that posted message, but I don't need to get my dev peeps involved. Right, and then this one is just here for a recap when you're going back to look at what the example was for this. So that's just a leave behind. So now if we build out our scorecard, we've got our walk is a little more constrained. I can't just call it from any system with my standard triggers. I'm stuck with kind of the standard triggers. I can't brand that notification, that the bot that it comes from. I'm kind of stuck with the Flowbot for now. I can private message individuals, so that one's cool. It does support adaptive cards. I skipped it now. We're going to talk about it next. I kept it simple. I'm going to more to notify. So that's a good reason to kind of maybe look at Power Automate if I want to do some more stuff on the Microsoft 365 side. So I'm going to pause here, take a drink, and see if anybody else has any questions.
Hey, Corey, this is Tiernan.
Yeah.
Is there any way to remove the sender information from the bottom of your Flowbot automated message, advanced settings or anything?
That's a good question. So I haven't looked lately. I thought maybe we used to. Let's look. So let's look at this one. So I didn't see it there. Any advanced options? No. I don't think so right now.
Okay.
I know that there are some actions that have that kind of like as a toggle, but it doesn't look like I have it on these. Good question.
Maybe I'll go in developer mode and just Google something.
There you go. Anybody else?
Let's give them one second to come out. They all came in via chat last time.
Okay.
All right, nothing right now, but I'll raise my hand if they come in.
All right, cool. So let's keep moving. And if we're not hitting the mark, you want me to slow down or speed up, let me know that too. It looks like, or leave. People are getting bored and leaving. That's cool too. All right, so let's talk about jog. So this is really just kind of the next step with Power Automate. And we're going to use something called the HTTP request trigger. We're still going to send a message in from the Flowbot. And we're going to show more complex. So we're going to do more of an adaptive card. So we'll talk about adaptive cards for the first time and what that means. So the diagram looks a little similar, especially on the left-hand side. So I'm still going to be able to send in the chat. Sorry, I keep pressing the wrong thing. So I can still send in the chat. I can still send into a Teams channel. Now, instead of being constraining myself to Office 365 or manual or scheduled triggers, I am going to use the HTTP request trigger. So essentially, I'm going to do what, for all intents and purposes, looks like a webhook, an incoming webhook. I'm going to create that as my trigger in Power Automate, and then do kind of the rest of my stuff. And we're going to use something called adaptive cards for this one, which I'll show you. So we're going to build a very similar flow that just uses a different trigger. Then I could go back and I can call it via Postman, I can call it via ServiceNow, and call it via anything. All right, so let's do that. So I'm just going to create a brand spanking new one, and you know me, I like to skip. So we're going to start with searching for HTTP. So this is the one I want when an HTTP request is received. So be warned, this is premium. You would need an additional license, or if you're still grandfathered in to when this used to be not premium, this is an additional license. So you just keep that in mind. Now, some people will take this and say, well, when If I need to do this, I might go into Logic app. That is absolutely a viable option. I'm just going to stick with Power Automate for today to show you how to do it. All right, so now we're saying we're going to set up this URL that I can send messages to, just like I did the incoming webhook, and that means I can call it from any system that I have. So the first thing that we have to do is tell Power Automate, what does that incoming message look like? What do I expect to see? So I'm going to open up my collections here. If you haven't played with collections in Edge, I recommend you check it out. It's just a nice little way to organize stuff. So I've got a bunch of links in here, and we are going to, what are we going to do? We're going to look at one of my GitHub repos. So we're going to look at this one. So this is in the deck. I'm going to go to walk, and I'm going to grab this stuff right here. So like I said, after today, you want to come in and do a lot of the stuff that we were talking about today. You can follow the instructions here. I'm going to copy that. So that is, let's look at that. So what is that? That is a little JSON, right? I got my curlies, I got my name, and I got my value, my name and my value. So this is saying that I'm expecting an incident with the value for the incident, the title with the title, the description. Hopefully that is not too hard to understand. So this is kind of an example of what I'm expecting. So we'll copy that. Then we're going to go over here. So the key thing, if you ever do this, is not to paste it in there. That's not the schema. Schema is the definition of what I expect to see. We're going to use this use sample payload to generate that schema. So this is where I paste. Okay, I never right-click paste, so I don't know where it is. So I'm just going to do Control-V. All right, so I pasted this in. When I hit done, it figures out what the schema. You don't have to know how to do this, but it says I'm going to expect an incident, a title, triage members, URL, blah, 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 blah. All right, cool. When we're done saving, it'll give us the URL. So let's do a new step. Let's go back into Teams. Let's do a couple new ones. Let's do an adaptive card one. So let's do post your own, where is it? Did it? It's this one. Post, there it is, sorry, can't read. Post your own adaptive card as the flowbot to a channel. All right, so let's do that. Let's pick my team. Great, let's pick my channel. Great. So the message is we're going to put in an adaptive card. Okay, so what, Corey, you've said adaptive card like 6 times now. What the heck is it? All right, so if we go to adaptivecards.io, which is also linked in the deck, let's take a look at this. What are adaptive cards? Adaptive cards are a UI that can be used across any platform. So it is JSON. I'm just going to let's go look at some examples, and let's get rid of this guy. Let's look at calendar reminder. So this card on the right is an example of adaptive card. It looks a lot like that incoming webhook card. So it is a card that is special. It's adaptive cards. And so how I built that again was through JSON. So I've got a bunch of key value pairs in curly brackets. Well, adaptive cards are special in that they're kind of they're templated, platform agnostic framework, a tool that, so when I build this JSON, it is recognized and known how to render by lots of different platforms. So I just create one set of JSON and I'm send that to Teams, and Teams knows how to look at that and render it the way Teams wants. I can send it to Skype, and Skype knows how to read it and render it the way they want. And WeChat and all these other ServiceNow, all the different chat and bot platforms can subscribe to adaptive cards and just say, okay, don't have to send me a Skype specific or Teams specific format. You know adaptive cards, send that to me, send the same thing to somebody else, and we're going to render it differently, but you don't have to have different formats for different platforms, if that makes sense. So unlike the incoming webhook that says I've got my own format, the rest of the time now we're going to do adaptive cards because I just have to know one. So I'm going to take this one. I'm going to copy that JSON. And I should get something that looks a little bit like this. It's got a drop down. It's got some buttons. That's cool. So let's go into my flow. And I'm just going to paste this in right in here. And maybe we'll change the summary because a lot of these are placeholders. So I'm not going to take the time. We'll just say summary go. All right. And then while we're at it, I'm just going to do another new step. And we'll do the chat one at the same time. Post your own to a user. All right, that's cool. Go to admin again. Paste that in. We'll say check it. All right. All right, so we've got two. We're going to call this, this is a jog, adaptive. So we're going to save that. All right, now we're going to get fancy. So once I saved it, I now get a URL. So let's copy that thing. Now we're going to go back to Postman. We're going to do a similar thing that we did with the incoming webhook. We're going to create a new request. We will call it our automate. All right. So we're going to change this again to post. I'm going to paste in my link. Like I said, developers are just good Bingers, Googlers, and copy pasters. I'm going to say the content type is JSON just to be safe. All right. And then I need a body. So let's go back, copy this stuff. So what, sorry, now I'm bouncing around too much. I'm gonna say wrong. So now this is the data. This is the information. I'm sending it incident 1, incident title 1, blah, blah. We can change this to whatever we want so we know that we're not lying. All right, let's load up Teams over here. Let's see if we can get some live demo working stuff. All right, so I'm gonna, now what I'm calling, instead of that webhook in Teams, I'm calling my Power Automate flow that I have put kind of a webhook URL on. So if I hit send, cross my fingers, I get a 202, so that's an accepted. This is what the default HTTP request trigger does, gives me a 202. So now, okay, summary goes here, dude. So I got the Flowbot coming in here. I need to replace these, but hopefully you're cool with, like, I got a card here. So that's cool. I got an adaptive card here. Let's go check out my private chat. All right, I got another one from the Flowbot, and I've got my card, and I got some button stuff. All right, nice. So now I can use Power Automate that can be called from anywhere to send any type of data, and then I can do my notifications, but I can do anything really. I can create teams, branch off, do all kinds of other stuff, right? So while we're in here, I want to do one more thing. There's a couple more post a message as that I want to look at, just because I feel like there's some newer ones that not everybody has seen all the time. So I'm gonna post an adaptive card to a Teams channel, wait for a response. So I believe this is the one that Doug referenced earlier that he was using. So I'm gonna put it into my team again. All right, I'm just gonna paste that's not what I want. I want you. So I'm gonna put my adaptive card in there, my JSON representation, and we'll call this, we know it's different. All right. Now, the nice thing about this, so we haven't talked about the buttons in adaptive cards. So these messages don't just have to be just static text. Those buttons, look at a button. These buttons can actually do something. They can call back to another system. They can kick off another process. They can advance the workflow. So let's just look at a super simple example. So this one is saying, remember, and wait for a response. Okay, well, let's see what happens when I wait for a response. So I'm just going to put a message in so that when somebody clicks one of these buttons saying that they did something, we're going to say, someone already did something. Okay, and then we get to say, should we update the card? So I'm going to show you what this means. And this is actually pretty darn slick. So let's save that. All right. And the nice thing about Power Automate, I don't have to go back in the Postman to make that same call. I'm just going to do the previous one that we did before. So let's run that. Let's go into Teams, cross our fingers. All right, so wait for a response. So this is our card. Now let's say that the snooze button goes and does something, or if I've got 5 people in this team, I only want the first person to click on this to get it. Maybe they're grabbing an incident to own, or a ticket, something like that. So if I click on this, what we'll see is the adaptive card knows how, and Teams knows how to then update the card for everyone, so that if Tiernan or somebody came back in here later and tried to click on that button, it's actually going to say, someone already did something. Sorry, Corey responded. So I don't need you to click on that button. So I'm not going to get duplicate button clicks for the one incident if that's how I wanted to work it. If you don't want it to work, you want 5 people to click on the button, you can do that too. Go nuts. Perfectly fine. This is just it's kind of a cool, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to write another card and do the transition. It kind of, just those couple drop downs allow me to do this automatically, which I think is pretty slick. All right, let's go back. Let's recap. So we're back to creating our HTTP endpoint that can be called from anywhere. That's cool. I did introduce a premium connector with that by creating that HTTP endpoint. Still comes from the flow bot. I can still contact a channel or a person without pre-configuring. Now we're into the adaptive cards, which is cool. Gives me flexibility to use the same UI across lots of different platforms. I can still do all the other things that I can do in Power Automate. I still can't update that message, which is a bummer, and we'll talk about why that's such a bummer, and I shouldn't need my developer friends. So here's a screenshot if you're looking back on the deck later to see which actions that I used. All right, so let's build out our scorecard one more time. We were adding on the jog, so the changes from the walk are, now I can call it from any system. I do need a little more than the standard Office 365 license, but then everything else matches what I was doing before in the Power Automate with standard triggers. So I'm going to pause again, see if you have any questions. All right. So now, what's that?
Easy bunch.
Easy, but well, yeah. Hopefully it's cool, or like if this is not hitting the mark, let me know. All right. I believe most of you. Let's look back at my All right. So let's look. Some of you are developers. Some of you are not. Some of you are maybe, and I still can't get over 3 people that don't like pies. All right. So we've got some devs in here. All right. Let's talk about the run. And so I am going to open up some code. I have to run this example. If you're not a developer, you don't really have to know how to write code. I'm going to show you. It's just going to be some copy and paste. If you don't want to follow along ever, that's fine. I do think I want to demystify bots and the development of this kind of stuff a little bit. So I think if you just watch me go through it, maybe you'll never do it, but you'll say, well, you know, it's not maybe such a black art as much as I thought. And the bot that we're going to build here is it's a bot name only, so I should really have air quotes. And we've got a question, just a lot to take in. Okay, thanks, Eric. All right, so Corey says, I recognize a few GCC customers in the session besides myself. Are any of these solutions available in GCC? All right, that is a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. There's probably the preview Power Automate Teams actions probably aren't in GCC. I can't recall if the incoming webhooks were in GCC. You might know, Corey. That's a really good question. You're not finding it. Okay. How about the HTTP? How about the HTTP request trigger? Are you finding that in Power Automate? And feel free to come off mute if you want, Corey. Okay, not finding it. All right. Maybe if we have a little time at the end, we'll, so I don't have a GCC tenant, unfortunately. I have helped folks in GCC with some of this stuff, so I know some of it is there. I just don't have a list of what is and isn't. So if you're not seeing it in your environment, then it might be a fair assumption that it's not there, especially the preview actions that are there.
Corey, I'm getting a link to the GCC Power Automate features right now. I'll post it in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, don't worry about it, Corey. I always forget. I saw a bunch of you that I assumed would be in GCC, so it's cool. Yeah, let's remind me if we get time at the end, Corey. Maybe we'll go back and we can maybe dig a little bit and see if there's anything that is GCC or not. Hopefully this one is GCC. I'll have to think about it. So now we're gonna create a bot, and as I said before, it's air quotes. So I do have some C#. You could write this in almost any language, but I'm going to use Visual Studio. I'm going to use C# because that's what I'm comfortable with. But what the crux of this is, I want to create kind of like a major incident bot. And unfortunately, in our app templates, we've got a lot of good bots. We don't have the major incident bot. The Teams team within Microsoft has their own major incident bot. And I've been waiting for them to kind of release an open source version for everybody to use for a long time. I don't know when it's going to get here. So since then, I've been working with other customers, and I don't think I see any of those cats in here right now. But building this little simple example, understanding how to get kind of the full spectrum of sending proactive messages took me like a month or two working with the customer, not like every day, but it took way too long. So I wanted to share with you all kind of the inner workings of this kind of stuff. So what I wanted to do was when there's a major incident, I want to create a card in Teams that's got some information, it's got some highlighting, it's got some buttons, but I can't have it saying active when it's not active, right? Once that has been resolved, or we're in triage, or when I change that status, I need it to change. So I need to be able to update it so that everybody that comes in here and looks at the top card of this says it's closed. Now I can have 300 replies still going on there, but just at a quick glance, I want somebody to be able to see status has changed, or maybe we've changed some other information, or I want to click some buttons and take me over to ServiceNow, whatever it is. So doing this has been somewhat of a challenge. So there are really good examples like Company Communicator of sending proactive messages without anybody needing to start them. And Company Communicator is good. You can start with that, you can take it, but there's so much other stuff in there that I couldn't get the piece to just send a simple little message like this that I wanted to make my own. And then there are other examples where they said, okay, this is a simple proactive message where I'm just sending something into Teams without somebody having to start it. But they always started it with somebody typing a manual message into the team. So I'm like, well, that's not a proactive message. You started with another message and got some context, and then you went off of that. So what I've done with the help of a customer, a guy named Brett at CH Robinson, I don't see him here, but give him full due. So in my GitHub repo, I have this exact solution that we'll walk through. We'll actually use today. So what we built is, I built the simplest application, just a simple little web application, an endpoint that I can call that's written in C#, that the only reason it's a bot is because I'm using the bot ID. I'm hosting it in Azure. I'm just going to show it to you on my local machine today. I am going to make the calls to the graph and other, and it's kind of like this, not the real graph, but I'm going to make calls so that I can drop things in the Teams, make it look however I want, make it come from whoever I want. And oh yeah, I want to do updates and I want to be able to do other things. So finding exactly how to do this took me some time and I never could find it. So I built it myself and tried to get it to the simple example I could so that I can go take it later. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to take some big behemoth application and implement it for something like major incidents, which when we're in the middle of a major incident, I can't have that thing really going down and not knowing how. It's open source, but it's got 100,000 lines of code. I'm not going to know how that works. So I got to know how this thing works. So if something happens, I can quickly fix it. Okay. So let's take a look at the demo. All right, the first thing I'm gonna do, never mind, sorry, 30-minute warning, 2 minutes. Good thing I didn't see that, you would have scared me. All right, we got 30 minutes. We'll try to end a little early so you got some time to go to the next one. Okay. I am going to go into, this is gonna be the hardest one. I'm gonna try to do everything from scratch and we'll see if it's gonna work. So we're gonna go into Azure first and we're gonna create a bot channels registration. And remember, I'm creating a bot, but it's a bot in name only. I'm not doing a conversational bot that we're going to say, hey, bot, I have a question about this. And then it gives a response. I'm not even going to talk to that. I'm just using it so that I can send a message. So it's actually a lot easier than creating an actual bot. So I'm in Azure. I'm going to create a bot channels registration. For bot. We're going to wait. All right, this is the one I want. Let's do that. All right, let's call this auto messages and hope that I didn't use that one. All right, that's cool. So look, it's expecting an endpoint. So all a bot is a URL that Teams can take questions from people and send it to my bot. That's this URL, and then I can send it back. Well, I'm not even going to use it that way, so I don't even have to put anything in here right now. But I do have to create an app ID and password. So let's go do that. So I'm going to create a new, and this is where our copy pasting is going to come in handy, where we earn our developer money. All right, so it's going to open up a different place here. I'm going to say new registration. I'm going to call this auto messages just to keep consistent. I'm going to say any tenant can use this, and that's all I need. All right, so I'm going to copy this. I'm going to need my application ID for later, so I'm going to copy that. So I got my little notebook over here. Keep my stuff. All right, then we're going to create a secret. And hopefully I will have deleted this by the time the recording comes out, so some hackers can't come by and use my stuff. So I'm going to create a new one. We'll call this workshop demo. I suppose I could have let it expire. All right, so the main thing I want is this value. This is my secret, so let's think of it kind of like my password. So I'm gonna keep that. All right, so that's all I really need. I think I'm done. So if I come back over here, I'm gonna take my password, paste that in, and I'm gonna take my ID, I'm gonna paste that in. So this is where being a real developer, copy pasting. Green check marks. All right, good. All right, then let's create it. Validation successful, create. All right, cool. So let's go back in and see if we got it. I have to be patient. It's going, deployment in progress. Okay, so we're creating that bot channels registration. The next thing that we're gonna have to do is allow it to be used in Teams. So once this loads here, I'm going to have to go enable Teams for it. Okay, and if it takes any longer, I'm just going to use the one that I already have. So if we just take a look at this one, so this is one that I created yesterday. If I look at my channels, so this is different from Teams channels, these are bot channels. So the key thing to notice here is that, so I can use this on the web, I can use it in Teams, I can use it on Alexa, GroupMe, Slack, blah, blah, blah. So these are all different channels that I just enable it for. So remember I said adaptive cards can be used on lots of different platforms. If Facebook, Twilio, Slack, if they all subscribe to adaptive cards, know how to work with them, I just have to create one set of notification cards. And no matter who I send it to, I can use the same bot for all these different channels and use the same message formats, and they will all just render it the way that they need to render it. So I've got Teams enabled. That one is probably taking, is it still taking too long? Come on. Counterclockwise helps it go faster. No, still going. All right, maybe the middle of the day is slower than middle of the night. All right, I'm gonna do one last time. All right, succeeded. Refresh, please. Dude, let me change, go back. I told you this was gonna be the hardest one. Where'd it go? All right, let me back out real quick. Let me just try some kung fu here. All right, there you go. All right, so I've got my auto messages. So let's look at this. This is my bot channels registration. Let's look at channels. And I complain about that, but I remember, so I was a developer a long time ago when I'd still be waiting on my server request to come in a couple weeks later. So I shouldn't complain too much. All right, I'm gonna, so here's Teams for Government, so I could enable it for that. So I'm gonna enable it for messaging. I'm gonna agree and say bam. So now I can use my bot in Teams so that when I install it in a channel, then I can post a message in there, which is exactly what I want. All right, so now we should be good. So now that I got that, I got my IDs and my secrets copied. Now let's go over to Teams and let's install it in there. If you recall, well, I haven't talked about it yet. So in order for me to post a message as a bot now, as this auto messages, I have to install the bot in every channel or for every person that I want to receive a notification. So let's go do that now, and let's talk about, like, well, that sounds maybe like a little whack, right? So you do have to install it, and the reason for that is you don't want somebody out there creating a bot and then just spamming all your people without you knowing it. So you do have to install it. There is a way to automate the installation proactively for everybody, every team, and every person that you want to send it to. So there is a link, I believe, here in the run. Yeah, so there's a link here for enabling proactive bot installation. So to kind of help you with, if you want to send it to 10,000 people, you're not going to go ask them all to install this bot. You can go install it them using a little bit of script. So you follow this. We're not going to do this today, but you can go install it kind of under the covers for them and help you out with that a little bit. First thing we're going to do is we're going to come back to Teams. We're going to go into an app called App Studio, which is provided by Microsoft. What this allows us to do is it's going to help us write some JSON that Teams needs to be able to install the bot. So I'm going to create a new app. I have bad network quality, so if you're not hearing me or something jumps in and out, let me know. All right, so we're going to call this auto messages. I'm just going to use this thing. All right, so now is where we're going to pop our app ID in that we created earlier. All And I'm just going to give it whatever name. It's version 1. That's cool. Workshop demo. All right, so I'm filling in information, and what it's going to do for me is it's going to create the JSON package underneath this that it needs, but I don't have to know the JSON. I don't have to know what format. I don't have to know what fields. It's kind of just walking me through it. So it's a nice little kind of wizard here. Let's say this is me, and this is this. Our way through this. It's making me. And all right, are you good? Okay, so now I can brand it. So let's go grab my favorite images. So I've got, I don't know if this is my favorite one. I built something in the past called Cortana. So one of my good friends, if you recognize him, hates when I do this, but he's got the deal with the glasses on. So that's what I want my bot to look like. It usually does take a few minutes for that to kind of show up. So when we do eventually get a message in there, it may not actually have this. It may have a placeholder, but it should show up later. All right, so now I've got kind of my core information. This is the name of it. I've got my ID, my description, and then here's what I want the bot logo to look like. So now I need to come down to capabilities, and I want to come to bots. You can build other types of Teams applications here, tabs and connectors. We're going to skip that for today. We're just talking about bots. So I am going to do an existing bot. I'm going to paste in my bot ID. And the couple things to call out here is I want to use this for personal and team chat scope. So if I wanted to talk to my bot just outside of a team, or I wanted to message that person. All right, so let's save that. We should be good. And we'll go to test and distribute, and we're good. So let's look at this app manifest. So what it did was it created, remember I got curly's name value pairs, so that's JSON. So it created all this based on the nice little GUI. So I didn't have to know all these pieces. I went through the fields. All right, so let's install it. I'm going to add it to a team. I'm going to do, we're going to do workshop channel. I think that's the right one. Yep. So we're going to set up our bot. Crossing our fingers. Okay. So it's taking me to the channel. It says I can add mention, but if you recall, I'd never set up a URL for this thing yet. So if I try to talk to auto messages, it ain't gonna work. And that's fine. I don't want to use that bot in this way right now. But it's just kind of started that add mention for me. I'm not gonna use it as a conversational bot yet. You could in the future, but for right now, we're doing notifications. All right. So that's the hard part. So let's talk about, let's fire up our code here, and let's send a message into this channel now that we've got our bot installed. So what I'll need is, if I look up here in my browser, I've got this stuff right here. This happens to be my channel ID. So I'm going to copy that. So I need to know this so I know where I want to send my message to. So that is one thing that I'll have to get for each channel that I want to send to. There's ways to automate around. If I need to get like 250 of these things, I'm not going to want to open up 250 channels in the browser and get it. There's other ways to do it. But for a simple kind of prototype right now, I'm going to grab that. I'm going to paste it over here. All right. Let's see where we're at. All right, let's go into some code. So in the deck is the link to this Teams priority incident response. We're on the run. And so there's a Visual Studio solution in here. And there's also one there's another link around Teams proactive messages. So we're just gonna run that Visual Studio solution, and we're gonna copy paste our values in there and use Postman. So I'm gonna open up Visual Studio, and hopefully the font is big enough. I increased it, but if I need to go bigger, please let me know. All right, so if you're not a Visual Studio nerd like I am and like half the crew is, it's okay. All we're looking at again right now is JSON. So I've got curly braces and name value pairs. Okay, so this is my configuration for, which one do I want? I want this one first. So I've got my configuration for my little app here, my little cloud on that diagram that I'm going to use to call send messages. So I'm going to replace some values here. I've got my IDs and I've got my password. Being real developers now, we're copy pasting. And I've got my Teams channel. All right. So now that we got that, we're ready to go. And I want to call out one thing. So this actually took me a lot of time to kind of figure out. If you've ever called the graph, which is the Microsoft API on top of M365, this does not look like a graph URL. This is Teams' own URL. This is how I'm going to send a new message in. So I'm going to send a post to this URL with some stuff on the end. And that's how I'm going to get a message in here. So if I just look at my code here, the real thing that I care about is this kind of payload right here. So I'm sending JSON again. And all I'm really sending it is, here's my bot ID, here's my channel ID, and here's the message. Here's the text that I want to send it. That's all we're sending. We just had to figure out the right URL and the right format to this. That is pretty much it to this code. It's a one pager. There's other stuff down here around updating it and like doing the key stuff, but when it all boils down to it, this one page is what does the magic for us. I'm going to make a request to that URL, sending my information. So let's fire this up. So I'm running this locally instead of in Azure. All right, so let's see if we can get a little split screen going. All right. So, and I have the Postman collections out there as well that you can just reuse. So if we're going to start with this one. So I'm going to send to my application, and the body is, I'm just going to start with a simple message. Let's send a message. Let's send it. Let's cross our fingers. All right. So I got auto messages. I told you that this might not show up. There it is. Here it doesn't. So that should take a few minutes. So I sent a message as my bot. Here's my message. Really, really proactively. Nobody started a conversation with me. I did have to install it first, but this is as proactive as I can get. I didn't have previous context. Nobody started, I didn't look at another message. I just, using my bot information and this channel, I sent this in. You have no idea how long this took me. Sorry, I knocked over stuff banging on the desk. If you want to do, I might have saved you a little time. So, okay, that's cool. But Corey, you promised update. All right, let's look at update. So I got another call here. I'm going to feed in the message ID. So one thing that we got back was, if I look here, from that call was the ID of the message. So I got my thread and bam, there's the message ID. Well, now that I got that, I can start to do some things, right? I can do my update. So now I'm going to make another call. I'm going to say, we're going to change it to resolved, and it's going to, let's look. Ooh, bam, updated. And then I put this in there. So now I've got a message that I can keep up to date because I got the message ID back. All right, I know we're getting close on time. So, all right, let's take this to the next level. I've got another solution here that is also in the GitHub repo. This is going to do kind of my more complex card. So I'm going to paste in my values again. This is just riveting content. All right, and then the last one is my channel ID. Okay, this time the main difference is I do have an adaptive card here. So if I look at my adaptive card, so remember curly braces, name value pairs. I've got my adaptive card, just a bunch of JSON, and I've got some stuff like, hey, if the status is active, make it look like this. If not, make it look like that. So I got a little logic in here, got a little fancy on it. So I made my changes. Let's run this. And let's see if we can get that looking closer to like a major incident card that I might actually use. All right, so that appears to be running. Let's come over here. We'll call a different. So I'm going to call a very similar API, and I'm going to now, instead of just a message, let's pretend ServiceNow is going to send me all of this stuff: my incident ID, the title, the status, urgency, open, blah, 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 whatever you want to send in. So let's go ahead and send that. Let's look over here at Teams. All right, so auto messages. Posted this card with like a little emoji. I've got active that's red, and my information and some buttons. So that's looking closer to what I want. Now the last thing we have to do is I want to update that. So let's look at this other post. So remember, I got my message ID back. So I got it back so I can do something with it. Cool. Now I'm going to send in everything I did before, except the status is going to be closed. And if I had other changes, I'll just make those changes. So if the details changed or the owner changed or whatever it was, I'm gonna update it. So I'm gonna hit the send on this. We're gonna look over here. Bam, updated. I changed it to close. Got me a little different emoji. Now I can start to use this on something like major incidents. All right. I don't know how many people I put to sleep, but that got me hyped up because that took me a long time to get into like a little 5-minute demo. All right, so let's recap and kind of cap this bad boy off. All right, so we created a bot. I can call it from anywhere. So there's no like premium connectors or anything like this. There is some additional costs outside of Office 365. So depending on where you host this, if you host it in something like Azure, you're hosting a web application, so you pay per usage. You actually don't pay usage on calls that come through Teams for bots. Actually, in the documentation, if you messages to your bot to and from Teams actually there's no cost to that. It's just that if you were hosting that application that the endpoint that we're calling, there is a cost to that. So I want to just be open that it's not like everything's free. You have to host that somewhere and pay for it. So I can fully brand my bot. I got my cool little Cortana logo. I called it whatever I wanted. And just remember, this is like double quotes bot, right? I'm not talking to it. I'm just using it as my notifications. It's almost just like a back-end service account. I do have to install it for every channel and user, but we called out this one will help us automate. So if I want to do company communicator for everybody in the company, I'm going to use this script to install it for everybody. We like that it uses adaptive cards. Hopefully, I don't have to prove that you can do whatever you want in code now. You can make graph API calls to create teams and do other stuff. Unfortunately, you need losers like me to develop stuff if you're not comfortable doing it. All right. So let's finish up our scorecard. We've got it fully built out. I can call from any system. I've got some asterisks here on the license, so I don't need more than a license, but this is I need to host the API somewhere. I can brand it. I can send it to people. I can update. So the update for me was really, that was key. I needed to be able to get back to it or collect information. So who asked earlier about, so can I send stuff back to ServiceNow? This is probably where I would do it in a bot. I would write some code, Joseph, to be able to I could take replies to that message, bring them into ServiceNow. So I'll get a notification on any time somebody replies to one of my messages as the bot. So I can take that and I can put that into ServiceNow or wherever on the fly. I could do something at the end. The bot is really right now going to be the easiest way to do that. Okay, so Corey, break it down. You got like 11 rows in there. Break it down. So here's kind of my thoughts, and I'm open to others feeling differently or adding things. I feel like the crawl is the best approach for when you just want to send and forget. I don't need to update. I don't need to send things back. And I don't want to do this for like 300 channels or 100 channels, right? I got to go in limited number. If I'm doing 5, you're doing 5, somebody else is doing 5, we're cool. The best approach to use this walk for is when I want to do more than notify. So I want to notify and do some other things. And I want to do it within the Office 365 ecosystem. I want to do it when something happens in SharePoint or Mail or something. And when branding doesn't matter. And when I don't need to update. The jog is probably the best approach for when I want to do kind of the same thing. I want to do more. I don't need to brand. I don't need to update, but I need to trigger it outside of Office 365. I need ServiceNow to do that. That's where the jog would come in. And then creating your own bot or starting from another one and updating it is when you wanna have control over the complete process. You want to do, biggest thing for me is updates of that message, taking information back, getting alerted on when somebody replies a message. So something more like a major incident bot is where I want to go. Now, that doesn't mean if you want to do a major incident bot, you have to start here. No, you can start your major incident bot on the crawl. The team did. Start on the crawl, get some things coming over from ServiceNow, go in there, manually create meetings, and you'll get a big productivity improvement. And then work your way to the right. Okay, you don't have to take 3 months to build a bot. You can get this going next week and then work on your bot to improve it over time. All right, here's a glossary. It's there for you. So the next steps. So these are really just links in here for you to click and download it. All of my instructions for everything that we've done today is in one of these 2 GitHub repos. If you haven't seen the company communicator it is a production ready app template out there that I didn't build, somebody else smarter than me built, but it does the proactive messages that we've been talking about today, but it does it in a more production ready manner. So 5 minutes. I didn't leave you a ton of time, but let me know if you have questions. Every demo worked. I'm done for the day. I can't believe it.
I was going to say, Corey, just mic drop it and walk away. I've never seen a 1.5 hour flawless demo without something blowing up.
Well, who knows? Maybe something did, and I didn't even see it. Okay, so we didn't talk. So Tiernan, you did drop a note for the feature limitations on Power Automate, right?
Yes, it's up in the chat.
Okay, I don't know if Corey's still on. Corey, do you cut code ever? Do you got any thoughts on whether my C# bot is going to work in GCC?
So I think it would.
Okay.
But I don't know if my skills are up to that point yet.
Okay. Don't doubt yourself, man. If I can do it, you can do it. And hopefully, maybe not too long from now, we'll have the other bot that the team open sources so that we can just steal that. All right, well, if nobody's got anything, we can call it quits so you can get a little break in before the next session, but thank you all.
Corey, thank you very much. Appreciate the session. It was great, and I found it insanely informational. Hope everyone else did too, but thank you for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Corey.
Have a good rest of the day.
Great. Everyone else who's still on here, the next session in the Automate track is Lisa Severson, titled Leveraging Power Apps and Flow in the Public Sector, going through some use cases and lessons learned through her experience. If you're sticking around for that session, you can just stay in this same meeting. Again, up in the chat is the link to the survey. Please don't fill out that survey until the end of the day. We don't want a bunch of individual submissions coming through. They're just really difficult to manage. But again, if you fill out that survey, you get put into a drawing to win a Microsoft Surface Go. As I said, each session, we will be giving away a $25 Amazon gift card at random based on the attendees that stayed through the end of the session. So I'm going to hit my randomizer right now. And Mr. Joseph Castor, you are the winner of the $25 gift card. So I will use the email address that you're logged in with right now. If you want it sent to something else, please just shoot me a PM and I will have it sent to that email address. Again, thank you all for attending. I'm going to stop the recording on this session right now so you guys can chat or do whatever you want. It won't be recorded. The next session starts in 3 minutes and I will turn recording back on at that point.